What career do you wish to pursue when you grow up? As a physician, educator, or musician? Not at all. Elizabeth Holmes, then 9 years old, answered, "I want to be a billionaire." And she succeeded when posed this question. After founding a business named Theranos and declaring its intention to transform healthcare and transform society, Elizabeth went on to become the youngest self-made female billionaire. Elizabeth was praised as the next Steve Jobs, and the firm rose to a value of about $9 billion. She appeared on magazine covers. The only issue is that everything was false. This is the journey of Elizabeth Holmes' rise to prominence through deception, as well as how it all fell apart. Elizabeth Holmes left Stanford University at the age of 19 in order to launch her own company. Elizabeth altered the name from Real-Time Cures to something else since she didn't want to raise any suspicions and was afraid that people wouldn't trust the phrase cures. Consequently, she decided to title it Theranos, a play on the terms therapy and diagnosis. Because she was afraid of needles, Elizabeth imagined a day where you could just prick your finger and use a single drop of blood to screen for hundreds of diseases. Elizabeth raised the initial funding to launch the business because she came from a well-connected family. Her vision and confidence drew investors in, making her a successful salesperson. It was evident, though, that many of the investors had little prior experience in medicine, and some industry insiders even cautioned Elizabeth that her proposal was probably not even feasible. Elizabeth, however, disregarded the advice and started employing a group of scientists to assist her. Unsurprisingly, progress on this revolutionary blood testing device was slower than she'd hoped, so she demanded 24/7 research, causing employees to work through the night. Because of the current workload, the lab manager believed that this was a bad idea. In response, Elizabeth hired a second team and placed them in competition with one another, with the team that performed the worst being fired. The developers developed a machine prototype known as the Edison by 2006. It promised to simplify, expedite, and lower the cost of blood tests, all from a portable home-use gadget. However, the machine required a lot of modification because it was rarely functional and had a very high mistake rate. Theranos had burned through its initial funding, and Elizabeth needed more money quickly. She sweet-talked more investors, boasting about the revolutionary machine they'd created and claiming it worked perfectly. When investors asked to see the machine in action, Elizabeth orchestrated an elaborate deception, presenting a sham demonstration to hide the machine's faults. When the financial officer discovered this and advised against fake demonstrations, Elizabeth's response was cold. She had also pressured him to inflate revenue predictions, making the company's finances appear better than they were. Confronted about these issues, Elizabeth's expression turned ice cold, and she instructed him to leave immediately. She also intended to quit the company for having the audacity to oppose what she was doing, not just her office. He was sacked, and to make matters worse, Elizabeth never employed a new CFO to take his place, so investors could not challenge the ludicrous revenue projection she made. She could therefore easily invent any figure she desired, and it proved effective as Theranos was able to secure further millions of dollars in investment. However, the chief financial officer was just one of many in a long line of employees to get fired from the company. For example, when Elizabeth decided to start a trial of the Edison machine on a group of terminal cancer patients, several employees told her it shouldn't be done, since the machine was constantly breaking and giving wildly inaccurate results. They argued it wasn't fair to use real patients as guinea pigs, but she continued with the trial anyway, firing anyone who spoke out against her. In a culture of firing anyone who raised concerns, staff turnover was ridiculously high. Elizabeth ended up being surrounded by yes men with blind loyalty or people too terrified to speak up. Sunny Balwani, the number 2 in command at the company, played a significant role in firing employees. Described as a tyrant, he was brutal, aggressive, and intimidating. Sunny, who came from a software background, often repeated technical terms to sound knowledgeable. Sunny and Elizabeth were in a relationship, but this was kept a secret. Elizabeth lied to the board about it, knowing that hiring her partner for the second-in-command role was a clear conflict of interests. Sunny, described as a tyrant, had a history of abusive behavior towards employees. He monitored everyone on CCTV, checked their working hours, and shouted at them for not working enough overtime. Theranos had an intensely secretive culture with non-disclosure agreements, constant surveillance, and restrictions on mentioning the company. The company's structure was impractical, siloing off teams and hindering communication, slowing down research. Theranos often asserted that the reason for the secrecy was just to safeguard trade secrets, but in actuality, the purpose was to hide all of the false information regarding the state of their technology and the management of the business. Everyone who departed or was fired from Theranos had to sign a new non-disclosure agreement promising never to discuss anything that transpired there. On their way out, they were unable to even communicate with their coworkers. Theranos engaged a first-rate legal team and threatened to sue anyone who mentioned the business. As a precaution, Sunny Sonny would ask the head of it to dig up dirt on employees for potential future leverage if they ever spoke out. There was an incident where an employee refused to sign an NDA upon quitting, and Sonny called the police, claiming he had taken company property. When questioned, Sonny stated he had stolen property in his mind. It was an anxious, paranoid work environment. Yet many in the company believed they were working towards something revolutionary. Elizabeth constantly reminded employees of the impact their technology would have, making tests more accessible and helping detect various diseases, including cancer. Theranos announced a collaboration with Walgreens and Safeway in 2013 to provide blood tests with Theranos' device in their establishments. Elizabeth proceeded with the introduction despite reservations that the gadget wasn't functioning as promised. In addition to the substantial financial contributions made by Safeway and Walgreens, Elizabeth was able to acquire an additional $400 million from investors who thought the deal was going well by implementing machines in stores. The legitimacy of Theranos was enhanced when investors, including well-known figures like Rupert Murdoch and the Walton family, poured more money into the company without raising many warning flags. The idea with the deal was to set up Theranos booths in stores where people could get a blood test with a finger prick and choose from a menu of tests. Originally planned for 2011, Elizabeth stalled the launch for almost 2 years, providing various excuses, some bizarre, like blaming an earthquake in Japan. Eventually, Elizabeth had to decide whether to admit the technology didn't work, losing the deal with Walgreens and Safeway and refunding millions of dollars, or putting faulty machines in stores and hoping it worked out somehow. This was a watershed moment. Although Elizabeth had previously missiled investors, she was now actively endangering lives by allowing the public to use these malfunctioning devices. It might be lethal if a blood test performed on a Theranos machine yielded incorrect findings. They can receive a false diagnosis or believe their test findings are normal when in fact they have a major problem. Despite the risks, Elizabeth pressed on, and Walgreens and Safeway started offering Theranos blood tests in their stores. Since the machines weren't working properly, Theranos couldn't get approval from regulators for in-store testing. As a workaround, instead of doing the blood test in-store as promised, they collected the blood in-store and sent it off to a nearby lab, avoiding the same regulatory checks. One of the major selling points of Theranos was that it required only a small drop of blood from a finger prick. However, people often had their blood taken with a syringe, and the results that were supposed to be ready in a few hours often took weeks. Theranos was advertising a revolutionary experience, but it was essentially just a normal blood test. To maintain the illusion, Theranos used third-party machines from other companies for most tests, diluting the blood samples to run them on commercial testing machines, reducing accuracy. While Theranos stated that its device could conduct 192 tests, in actuality, it was only able to complete 12, and more than half of the tests were not even theoretically feasible. They pretended to be using their own technology while conducting testing on other people's computers. The lab notes beside the stores were hurriedly assembled by untrained workers. FedEx packages to the lab frequently overheated, resulting in blood clots. The public began to learn of abnormal test findings, endangering the lives of the patients. Yet, externally, Elizabeth got more investment, earned recognition, and Forbes called her the world's youngest self-made female billionaire in 2014, worth $4.5 billion. This is it for today. I hope you guys find this video informative and interesting. So do like and share this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe our channel BizVentures Media and hit the bell icon to stay tuned with us.